So let's talk about some of the big dating turnoffs, what women need to know, especially when you're out dating and you might be turning off men and don't even realize it. Thank you so much for joining us today on Second Act TV. So happy to welcome back Bob Grant, the founder of Relationship Headquarters. Bob, thank you so much for joining me again.
Thanks, Heike. It's nice to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you back. Our previous segments, I linked to those. Bob, of course, is a relationship expert, a dating coach, a life coach. And today's conversation, what women need to know, especially when you're out dating and, you might be turning off men and don't even realize it. And you have an article on that. We'll link to it. So let's talk about some of the big dating turnoffs for men. I'll give you the first one, that don't boast about yourself and your achievements. What exactly does that mean?
Well, the tendency is when we get nervous, we tend to fall back on what's familiar. And so if I want to fill in the gap, what do I know best about? I know best about myself. And to me, it's not necessarily boasting. It's simply sharing information. Men do this too. And the problem with that is while I'm sharing information, while it's helpful, is that I'm proud of it. I know what I've done to accomplish it, but it doesn't always invite the other person in. So when I'm sharing information, it'll come across, if you'll notice, that I'm talking about me and my accomplishments. And it's not a bad thing. It's just in dating, if I'm trying to get to know someone and them get to know me, I want to be able to share that with them. So while I share some information, I don't want to keep continuing on and on. I get into this sometimes. My sons are 14 and they tend to, when they talk, they just keep talking. And I remind them, I'm like, I'll listen because I'm dad. I said, but when you start going out with girls, they're not going to like this. yeah, dad. I'm telling you guys now, I'm trying to give you a head start. They just don't. And it goes both ways. Men have a hard time with it too. So when we're doing this and sharing about ourselves, we want to make sure that we also leave room to find out about the other person.
Yeah, you make a really good point under here that I want to draw to our viewers' attention, and it's give him a chance to tell his stories too. Don't over dominate the conversation. Meaning the one ups. Like if you just said something, oh, I went here and it was just wonderful, and all of a sudden it's, whoa, I've been there and I was there longer.
Mm-hmm.
That is really something to be aware of, isn't it?
It is, and some, I don't think folks realize they do that. If I'm uncomfortable with sharing the spotlight, it doesn't mean I have to totally fix that. But remember, in doing that, is that listening requires effort. I mean, talking's easy. Listening does require effort on the other end. And so if I'm bragging, talking about myself, the person, he may nod his head and listen, but he doesn't know where it's placed to fit in. And it just comes across like it's about me. And it doesn't mean that's who you are. I don't want him to get the wrong impression that this is the way you are all the time.
Yeah. Where is that fine line between just sharing something interesting and bragging? Is there an easy answer to that?
So what I tell people is, especially since I've got a number of clients that are chatty, and I say, great, be chatty. Just be sure and pause every now and then. Mm-hmm. And they'll say, what? Because I do this with clients all the time. Sometimes I'm in the middle of a fantastic thought. It's so inspiring, incredibly wise. But then I just pause, because I know if I pause, if they're following and listening, they'll say yes. But if they don't respond, I can tell they're full. Yeah. It's time for Bob to listen a little bit. So just that pause gives a man a chance to catch up. And if he wants to interject something, he will. And if he doesn't, you can keep going. It's when you don't pause and we keep going on. Like if I kept doing this now, which I won't for the next 5 minutes, you politely, yes, laugh and nod your head. But at some point inside, I know you're dying going, okay, Bob, okay, got the point. That's what we don't want.
I've been there. Not with you, but that's really funny. Yeah, the pausing is important because you're inviting somebody else to interact. The next one, make an effort with conversation, which sort of contradicts what we just said. Well, I mean, they'll contradict, but are you just sitting there listening and not saying anything and not asking anything about the man you're with? It implies that maybe you're not interested, right?
It does. And if I'm making important conversation, remember the goal of this is not like how much information we can exchange, or who gets the most words in. It's more just about, do I feel listened, and does the other person feel like I've listened to them, that I'm interested? And some of this depends on the person. If someone, if a man talks slower or if he talks fast, I don't mean you have to mimic him. But if I'm trying to interact with him more than anything else, I'm just trying to follow the pace. It's a lot like dancing. Dancing, there's ways to dance, but more than anything else, you kind of feed off your partner, and as opposed to someone having to be in charge, just take over all the time. And if I'm engaged in it, I might not actually feel, if I'm quiet, I might not feel like talking a lot. Let's try it a little bit. If you're someone that loves to tell stories a lot, let's just tone that down a little bit. We're not saying get rid of your personality, as much as be careful not to overuse what your tendency is. And that's what most people get in trouble with, is when in doubt, they do what's familiar. Overtalk, undertalk, or fix problems, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Well, especially in our generation as women, we were taught or told, you listen to your man, you let him talk, you let him be important, and just sit there and smile. I mean, I'd say that kiddingly, but it's true. Some of us still have that. We carry that into today's dating scene. Here's a good one, a really good one, and really think about if you're doing this. Self-criticism. That is such a turn up, actually, for both. That turns me off when somebody's constantly putting themselves down just so, for somebody else to build them back up. Talk to me about that.
So another word for self-criticism is being needy. And we'll go in depth for a little bit. So we think about narcissism, a really popular word now, that and attachment. Everyone talks about narcissism, attachment. But neediness is similar to narcissism, but it's just done through giving, or it's done by someone else lifting us up. So I say something that's so outrageous, so ridiculous, it's a put down all the time, and the person is left feeling they need to encourage me. They need to build me up. And that's the part that makes us cringe, because it's not appealing. It makes us feel sorry for the other person. And in the process, if we do that, we may get attention, but that's not a desire quality that's being built. It's more closer to a father-daughter or a mother-son kind of relationship. And so it feels good short-term. And when someone puts themselves down, instinctively, just like we see someone fall, whatever, we reach out to help. If I'm talking to women, I'm like, that's not being humble. I mean, that's not helpful what you're doing. I said, what you're doing is you're feeling vulnerable, and this is, you're wanting him to reassure you. The reassurance part is where we get into neediness. And again, not that being needy is always a bad thing, but when someone overdoes that with overgiving or put themselves down, we do feel it. And it's that feeling like, someone's drowning and you want to reach out to save them, but you can't, because they'll pull you in and you just don't know what to do. Yeah,
really pay attention to that. The even self-deprecating humor can get, maybe funny once or twice, and then it's like, oh God, what? It is a big turn off. So do pay attention if you might be doing that. Here's one that, I get this: not giving him your full attention. And one of the ways, of course, that we do that is with this.
So women are good, and since I'm talking one, you can confirm or deny. I think women, I've been told, are very good at multitasking. I mean, everyone does it, but women apparently are very good. And men are not so good at that. And there's been women I've talked with that they'll be doing something, and this was at a work setting one time, and I was talking with a colleague while we were doing notes. I put it down, and she said, she was doing notes. I stopped talking. She says, it's okay. You can keep talking. I can hear you. And at first I thought, how irritating, but she really could. I mean, it wasn't personal. It was just, she had work to do as we were going over a case. That was the first time I saw it. And since then I've noticed women are like, what's the big deal? I mean, I'm listening, but they're not looking. So a big thing, we call it active listening. So it doesn't mean you have to like totally just stare someone down. But if you don't act like you're listening, he doesn't feel it. Going back to feeling. Because having a woman's undivided attention for a man, at least from our perspective, is a rare treat. It doesn't mean women don't care. It doesn't mean they don't. That's why usually on first or second date, you have a woman's full attention, and it feels wonderful. And then and men coast too later on, not just women. But that being fully present is a choice that you make. As opposed to we're waiting to be inspired, that tends to turn out poorly.
Yeah, to me, it's just plain rude. I mean, if you're on a date, of course you pay attention to that person. And then if you're, if you're fed up with it or whatever, then end the date. I mean, I get it. But to have your phone there, or to even text someone, but oh yeah, let me do that real fast. I've seen it. I've seen people do that, and it's just, yeah, it's a huge turn off.
I think one of the things I've heard women talk about is if they're not inspired or if
Mhm.
it's not interesting, that it's not they're trying to be rude. And it's those times that I'm telling them, I'm like, I know you're not. And maybe this isn't going to be the guy for you.
Mhm.
I said, but that's a bad habit to get into once you start, letting your mind wander and stuff, because then when there's someone you really like and you think you're going to pay attention, what's going to happen is you're going to get really anxious because
Yeah.
you're not used to paying attention. You're used to, when there are feelings that don't feel comfortable, you just kind of drift off, even though you're looking in there, but you're not there. I said, you can't cut that on with someone you really like. So you can either practice staying in the present moment,
Mhm.
and it also it is courteous. As you stay
Exactly.
in the present moment, that's going to help you when you do like someone, because that's a skill that doesn't just come and go.
Yeah. You'd think that that was obvious, but it really isn't. And that's why I hope our conversation might inspire just a little, oof, did I do that? Or, yeah, that really annoys me. So thank you for explaining that. One last one, Bob. Getting too serious too soon. Big turnoff for men. It can be for women too, but I know that for men and as women, when we're excited about a new date, or wow, I really like this guy. Yeah, we sometimes have the tendency to do that.
It is, and I was reading something on or listening to an audiobook, and they were talking about the biology of how men fall in love, and I forgot the author. And she was pointing out, I've known this intuitively, but I haven't heard it broken down the way she did. It's true is that men, we start off really intense fast, and it's like different parts of our brains, and then it goes to a different part, and then that's core part of our brain, which means men fall in love later. So it starts off really intense,
Mhm.
and men don't start thinking about the relationship until later on.
Mhm.
And women, by the time they feel, they've already thought it through, or generally they're more cautious early on. I'm generalizing. And so by the time they feel they've thought it through, they're ready and stuff, and he hasn't. So
Mhm.
especially as a woman, if I know men start off hot and they make sometimes ridiculous promises, guys, you do, not all of you, but especially with dating apps. We got all this information out there and the person knows us. No, they don't. They don't know us, but we think they do, and it feels really great. And so if men won't slow down, I ask women to slow it down for the man's sake too, because by the time he starts thinking about it, that's when he's falling in love. That's when he's really, it's just a different way of falling in love the way women do. So if you do that too quick, I know he said certain things, and I know he was really excited because you smiled at him. I'm not kidding. But with that, I need you, every woman watching, to pace him early on.
Mhm.
I mean, ideally he should, but the pacing is so his brain has a chance to catch up with his heart.
Yeah. We did a whole segment on mixed messages that I think men send more. I mean, we both do,
Mm-hmm.
but exactly what you described just now. It's that mixed message, the enthusiasm first, from the beginning or at the beginning, and then that goes away, and you've left the woman thinking that you're much more interested than maybe perhaps you really are. So great advice for women, don't maybe fall for that. I don't know if I want to
Well,
put it
if you know going, I mean, ideally, I mean, most men know this. Most men know you don't make promises or say stuff you're not willing to fall through this. The tendency, and especially, I mean, with the internet and all, is you get so much intimacy so fast with all the details you get, and it really does feel like a connection. It feels like I'm sharing, and men aren't used to sharing a lot.
Mhm.
And then we crash because that thinking part always comes next. And it's when men don't do this, I'm telling women that remember, he's going to crash. I don't necessarily mean like fall off the planet, but he's
Mhm.
going to. That's biological. He's supposed to do that. So just early on, he's making promises or saying stuff. Just don't think of him like he's an evil person or mean. He's just really happy with you. He really thinks you're fun. Really wants to see you again, and he's running on pure adrenaline. If we're going to be gracious, we'll say he can't help it.
Yeah, lots to think about. And it is, we put so much into dating and online dating, or however we met this person. Let's not do anything just to turn it off then, when you don't even realize you might be doing that. Bob, we are at the end of the segment. Anything you want to add before we sign off on this one?
I think probably as we were talking, just the idea about mistakes, if you listen to these and think of which one am I more likely to make,
Mhm.
and it doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, you're bad at this, as much as that's an area that's really getting in the way of a man getting to know who you are. We're
Yeah.
not telling you to be something else as much as there's something that's probably getting in the way. And I'd like him to get the chance to see and know you for who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. Bob, thank you. We will link to all of your information. There's a lot more that I want to discuss with you. If you want to get in touch with Bob directly, we will have the link to Relationship Headquarters. And Bob, I'll see you soon again on another segment of Second Act TV.
Thanks, Ike. It's nice to be here.
If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button is right here. Just click on through to YouTube, and when you see the little bell right next to the subscribe button, hit that too, and we'll notify you every time we launch a new video. See you next time.